All right, and now I am just streaming us over to our mystery fans. Facebook is famous for that 15-second delay, and then we will go live. And looks like that is happening. Welcome, mighty mystery fans. I'm your on-air host, Sarah DeVello, and I am thrilled, pun intended, to be hosting writer, team, and couple in real life, Dr. Judy Melinek and T.J. Mitchell, whose brand new book, Aftershock, is out today. T.J., Judy, welcome. Tell us about Aftershock.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Aftershock is our second novel in a forensic detective series. With the heroine is Dr. Jessie Teska, who is a medical examiner, very, very loosely based on Dr. Judy Melinek here, who is a forensic pathologist and does autopsies to find out why people die for a living.
Very cool. I am fascinated by all of this. And I just want to tell everyone who's watching with us today that Judy and TJ are actually joining us live from New Zealand, where they live and are currently on vacation, but live there full time as well. So welcome, and thank you so much for getting up early and caffeinating to join us. I want to welcome everyone on Facebook. Welcome Dee Dee, welcome Christy, welcome Gail, welcome Thomas, welcome everybody. If you've been here before, you know how it works. And if you're new, here's how it works. This is your time to talk to our featured authors about all things mystery, thrillers, or writing, anything you've been wanting to ask these writers about their books, their writing process. I know I'm curious how they make it work on and off the page. This is your chance. So my partner in crime, pun intended, Margaret Pinard, who's also an author and a part of the Mighty Blaze team here, is handling things over on Facebook. So just go ahead and type your questions in the comment box and we'll get them right over to Judy and TJ. So Judy and TJ, this is your third book together. Your first book was Working Stiffs. That's a narrative nonfiction about what it's like to do the work that you do, Judy, in a morgue every day. Now you've written your second book in the Teska series, which is, of course, a mystery. So tell us, I mean, I have so many questions. Tell us what it's like to write and work together. How do you do it? Does someone do a first draft? Someone says, no, that sucks. I mean, tell us all the things.
For me, the way it started was different for each book. So Working Stiff, because it was based on my actual experiences, I kept a diary while I was doing my training years at the New York City Medical Examiner's Office. And then at the end of those 2 years, I structured it, reorganized it, and then I had to go to work. So I handed it off to TJ and I said, here, you're the English major, do something with this. At the time, he was a stay-at-home dad. So you want to pick up?
We should also point out, in case it's not clear, we are a married couple. And so we get the question a lot, how do you write about murders without committing any? And the answer is we have no overlapping skill set. Dr. Melinek has the stories and the imagination to bring those forward. And I'm a writer. I've always been a writer. I'm one of those writers who loves to be locked in a room wrestling with adjectives all day, which she doesn't really care about. So we never step on each other's toes. And she essentially hands me the story. I work on it. I hand it back to her. She reads it out loud to me. We go back and forth. We make changes. She makes corrections to all the science. The science in our books is 100% real, and also the police procedure. She ends up changing a lot of the dialogue that I write with cops, because it turns out that I only know how cops talk from TV shows. And she actually works with them.
Actual cops talk.
Yes.
And so that's how we work. And then just like we go back and forth in our interview here, you'll see this is how we do our writing. But the 3 books were somewhat different. Working Stiff, as I said, was based on a diary.
It's a memoir, but Working Stiff is written in the first person. Judy wrote it as a diary, and then we reworked it in the first person. Right. But it is nonfiction. It's a memoir.
Yeah. And in some ways, First Cut and Aftershock, the novels, are a continuation of that voice.
The narrative voice is much the same.
Yeah. So because it's our voice.
But of course, it's a fictionalization of cases that we take a case that Judy has actually worked on and then go from there into the world of American noir detective stories. and craft a story out of it.
And part of the reason for that is because every time I come home and tell TJ about one of my cases, he always gets frustrated. He goes, well, what happened next? Did they catch him? Who did it? I'm like, I don't know. I just did the autopsy.
I handed it off to the DA and went on to the next autopsy.
Yeah,
I've got new cases. So do they. I don't go skulking around asking what happened to the old one.
So this is our opportunity to finish those stories using our imagination,
yes,
or mixing multiple cases together.
Oh, I absolutely love this. I think this is so cool that you have a writing partner in your life partner, that you're basing it on true stories, which thanks to Judy's work and the more you have firsthand knowledge of. I mean, this is just so cool and so fascinating. I've never hosted anyone. I've hosted 5 writing partnerships, some of whom were married, some of whom were friends, some of whom were just collaborators, one other married couple, but no one's ever worked in a morgue. So this is so cool. I want to welcome Godfrey, welcome Liz. Gail would like to know, how can you discuss living in New Zealand and how that influences your writing? Great question, Gail. Gail, top community member. Thank you.
We came to New Zealand because I was working at the Alameda County Sheriff Coroner's office in the Bay Area, and COVID-19 had already emerged in community in the United States. And so I put together protocols for what I thought we needed to do in order to keep us safe, and then they weren't being followed. Some of them were implemented, some were not, some were implemented and not enforced. And I started to get nervous. I started to get scared that I would get exposed, that I would bring it home to TJ, to my mom, who's 75 years old. And I got an email basically from New Zealand, a company called Communio, that said, how would you like to work in a place without worries of COVID-19? And I said, yes, sir. I returned my CV, immediately told TJ and our daughters.
New Zealand has a chronic shortage of quite a number of different subspecialties of medicine, and forensic pathology is always one. They often are bringing in doctors from the United States, Canada, Britain to work for a few months or a year as sort of a working vacation. And in this case, we hope for longer under the same sort of circumstances on an essential worker visa, because Judy works a job that nobody in this country can fill right now. So
that's the message to some degree to the audience with regards to forensic pathology, is if you have an interest in forensic pathology, this is a wonderful career opportunity.
And when it comes to writing, when it comes to writing in New Zealand, we were lucky enough that any of you who are
isolation for 2 weeks.
Right. So when you fly in, you're in managed isolation in a hotel for 2 weeks to make sure that you don't have COVID, and that was a fascinating process. But during it, we got the copy edits for First Cut. And any of you who are
Aftershock.
I mean, for Aftershock, the second book. So any of you who are writers know that when you get the copy edits, you just have to buckle down and just concentrate and do nothing else. I was locked in a hotel room for 2 weeks with nothing else to do the copy edits and shoot this over at Judy and go back. So that was great. It was a great way to finish the book. But the books are set in our home city of San Francisco. Yeah. And someday we will, I think, set a book in New Zealand, but not in the immediate future.
Yeah, we're working on how to integrate the experience that I went through with COVID into the Jessie Teska series, but make it uniquely hers.
Wow, this is just so cool, and I didn't know that about New Zealand having a need for careers such as this.
Oh yeah.
So Judy, what is it like to do autopsies every day? I mean, what a fascinating and very unique career. Did you know you always wanted to do that? Did you fall into it, accidentally?
Well, that's chapter 1 of Working Stiff right there.
That's right. So that's what Working Stiff is about. It's about why I ended up in this field. I went to medical school wanting to be a doctor because my dad was a doctor, and I looked up to him and I wanted to be like him, but I didn't know what subspecialty I wanted to be. And in medical school, you do rotations. And in my rotation in surgery, I decided I love surgery. I want to be a surgeon. But in Working Stiff, in chapter 1 or 2,
chapter 1. By the way, the title of chapter 1 in Working Stiff is "This Can Only End Badly,"
right.
Because that's what I would tell people whenever they ask Dr. Melinek to tell them a story. I will interrupt and say, remember, if the story starts with a guy goes up the ladder with a can of beer and a power tool, this can only end badly.
Right. So but my personal story ended up well.
But it started out badly because surgery internship in 1996 in Boston was a very, very rough experience. And
TJ
I think
was
you
with
decided
me.
you didn't, that wasn't the life you wanted.
That wasn't. And TJ was with me through the whole process. So we've been together since
But also,
college.
what I remember is that you looked back on medical school and said, you know, I really loved pathology.
I did. And so when I decided that surgery was not for me, I switched to pathology, and I did the different rotations in pathology residency. And when I did my rotation at the New York City Medical Examiner's Office, and I went out to my first scene, which was a crane that had collapsed in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. I realized, oh, this is where I need to be. This is so exciting. I finally know, you just find you get to go under the police tape, you get to interview people, then you get to go to the morgue and see what really happened. It was so exciting. And that's actually the open, if anybody's interested.
The opening scene of Aftershock has some echoes of that first experience that Judy had with a death in public view.
Yeah, and the opening chapter of Working Stiff is about that scene, about going to that crime scene and how I discovered I wanted to be a forensic pathologist.
Oh, that's so cool. Margaret is saying chapter title, "This can only end badly," is brilliant. LOL. She loves it, as do I. Oh, this is so fantastic. By the way, Kirkus called Working Stiff a transfixing account of death, from the mundane to the oddly hair-raising. A rave review from Kirkus there. So congratulations.
And it's a New York Times bestseller, by the way.
Yes, absolutely. TJ and Judy are the New York Times bestselling authors of now 3 books. Bustle naming your first cut a most anticipated book of January 2020. You already have another one out, Scalpel Sharp, raves Kathy Reichs. This is absolutely fantastic. So tell us, what do you think the most important element of keeping those pages turning, of writing something that is transfixing, hair raising, keeping the suspense going?
You want to take
one thing that we try to specialize in here at Working Stiff Industries is verisimilitude. One of the reasons we started writing detective fiction is we wanted to get the science right. We wanted to get what Judy and her colleagues do, and her colleagues, not just the doctors, but everybody who works in a medical examiner or coroner's office, get what they do right. So we start from there. The science is always real. She does not let me get away with anything. There's lots of places where I want to cut corners and can't we do this? No, she won't let me do that.
Yeah, but in terms of making something a page turner, there's certain arts, or there's part of the writing craft that's associated with that. But ultimately, anytime we're stuck, though, TJ is the one who gets stuck because he's doing most of the heavy lifting, and then he comes to me and he says, okay, I'm stuck, this is where we're at in the book, what happens next?
And this is where we need to get to. How do we get there? And then I think about, well, what would I do if I were at work? And this is where I am in my investigation. Well, I would consult with this person, or I would call up that person. And a lot of times it'll be like, I'll sit at the microscope and look at something, and teacher's like, that's really boring. Or I get on the phone and call this person. Yeah, let's have you go and actually meet them.
I'm like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that.
So we certainly do take liberty, a little poetic liberty, and we do stretch what the ways that Judy might do her job. And Jessie Teska is a character very unlike Judy also. And Teska especially, she's a real risk taker though, which is how we get her into trouble and have her get out from behind her microscope.
Yeah, I'm not a risk taker, but I do get out from behind my microscope. That is one thing that we should say that everything that Jessie does is something that a forensic pathologist would and could do.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize that we actually work as detectives and investigate our cases. The police are really only interested in cases that are slam dunk homicides. If it's clearly a homicide, then they run with it. But the cases that aren't clear, the ones that are either, is it a suicide or an accident? Is it an accident or a homicide? When it's on the fence like that, where it's not really clear, the police don't often investigate it. They've got actual real homicides to investigate, so they're not going to do all that legwork. And we're the ones who call up the families and get the information, or sometimes go to the scene and figure it out. And as soon as it's a homicide, we hand it off to them. But that's why the series and most of the books focus on the ones that are not that clear, at least initially.
Wow, I actually didn't know that. I did not know that you did that investigative work. That's fascinating. And I want to get back to that. I just want to hop over to a question from our audience. Gail asking, showing my age, did you ever see the Quincy TV show, and did you like it?
I do. Did you watch Quincy?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. See, I watched.
There were only 3 channels where I grew up. Of course, I watched it.
I watched. Yes, we're in our 50s, so yes, we watched Quincy. I watched it briefly and found it really annoying. I didn't find him to be a compelling character. Specifically, what I found annoying about him is that he's so mean and nasty. He's not nice to the people around him. And most forensic pathologists, in order to be successful in their jobs, they have to be people persons. They have to be able to interact with the police, with the district attorneys. They have to be capable of explaining science in simple ways that a jury can understand. So I didn't find him compelling as a character. My favorite TV show growing up, also showing my age, was MASH, about surgeons because of the humor. And
Judy's told me that the one show that she's watched and we've watched together that really gets what she does and what medical examiners do exactly right is The Wire. David Simon's miniseries The Wire has some segments with interactions with the medical examiner, and it's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, because it separates the roles, that you don't have the medical examiner running around with guns.
Which, knowing his work, isn't a surprise, right?
I actually recently learned, though, through my own research for my next book, that within a certain medical examiner's offices, you can do and some are called coroners and some are called medical examiners, and there seems to be no rhyme or reason as to why that is city per city decision, but they can actually do a trial. They can have their own investigation and trial.
Okay.
Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So that's called an inquest. And to answer your question about the difference between medical examiners and coroners, I can answer that quickly because I answered on the stand really frequently.
Judy works ends up working as a forensic pathologist. I mean, as an expert witness in court quite a lot. So she gets these questions all the time.
Right.
Judy,
so
you're the coolest.
Well, that's part of the job, though. I mean, that's part of her city job. If there's a murder and eventually it goes to trial and they want to know what the forensics are, up she goes.
So a coroner system is one in which either law enforcement or a non-physician is appointed or elected to the position. Sometimes the position is a physician, but they don't have to be a forensic pathologist. So they could be an ophthalmologist, they can be an OBGYN, but they're often appointed or elected to the position. And in many places, especially rural places, they're law enforcement officers. They're part of the sheriff's department, for instance. Medical examiner systems they do the same death investigations. They determine cause of death, they do autopsies, but the whole operation is run by a forensic pathologist.
By a doctor.
By not just a doctor, but someone who is specially trained to investigate deaths in this level of subspecialty. So it's a subspecialty. First, you have to do pathology, where you study for 4 years or minimum 3, how to do autopsies and how to look at tumors under the microscope, for instance. And then you do an extra year of training called a fellowship, which is what Working Stiff is about. So Working Stiff's about my forensic fellowship. And that extra year allows you to become a forensic pathologist, and there are examinations and things like that. So the medical examiner system, it's all run by doctors. The coroner system, it's run by administrators or law enforcement officers. But ultimately, the goal is the same: figure out the cause and the manner of death. And so that's the difference between the system. And what was the original question? Remind me.
About that I learned that they can actually have a trial almost.
Right. So the inquest system is left over from the coroner system, where
which is hundreds of years old and goes back to oldie England.
That's right. And so in England, the term coroner comes from crowner. It's a derivative of crowner. And the crown wanted to know why people died. Because if someone died by their own hand, a suicide, for instance, then it was a crime against the crown, because the crown was also the church. And so all their property would go to the church, go to the crown. And if they were killed, for instance, by their heirs,
well, if they're killed, you want to know who done it.
Who done it, yeah.
Because if it's the rich guy's son,
yes,
and he killed him to inherit all the lands, then the crown is going to take those.
The crown takes the land. So that's why the crown has an interest in this, not only from terms of a law enforcement strategy, but also a estate,
tax collection, estate collection,
and the state tax, basically.
But if the rich guy fell off his horse and died in an accident, then you get to inherit. And this is what the manners of death are. Right. So manners of death are ways of classifying the same types of death as what are the manners.
So we have a natural, accident, homicide, suicide, and undetermined, when we can't figure out how it classifies. But the inquest process is done by the Crown or by the coroner in order to have people come and testify to what happened. And it's a way of showing transparency and airing out grievances, so to speak, especially in cases that may not go to a criminal inquiry. So for example, recently, if you look in the newspaper, there was an inquest in Los Angeles County about a man who died in police custody. And the DA may or may not press charges against the officer, but the inquest process allows for a legal proceeding where everything can come to light, where people can testify, and the hearing officer, in that case, it was a judge, can determine the cause and the manner of death.
They're relatively rare in the United States nowadays.
Wow, this is fascinating. Thank you so much. Margaret saying book set in San Francisco, surgery in Boston, crane accident in Midtown New York, living in New Zealand. You're quite the world travelers. Do you see the series traveling? Good question, Margaret. Thank you.
Oh, by the way, also, we should point out that Judy is an immigrant to the United States. She was born in Israel and came to the U.S. when she was 5 years old.
And Jessie Teska's got a Polish immigrant roots. So I mean, I think that's a really good point. Is we were travelers before we had kids.
Mm-hmm. I come from right outside Lynn, Massachusetts, where Jessie comes from. Also,
right. And then when I was in medical school, the two of us went backpacking through Europe together. We've taken our kids, to multiple different locations.
We certainly do want to travel with Jessie. If we're fortunate enough to continue writing these books, we are going to bring her to other places. But for now, I mean, we love San Francisco is our adopted home. Neither of us is from there.
We love
and we lived there for like 18 years before we moved here to New Zealand. We love the city and we love writing about the city, and we hope to go back to the city. It took a lot to drag us away from that place. And
COVID.
And we want to go back, but we will also expand the milieu of where Jessie's going to be.
Right. And the best part about Jessie as a character is she's currently working at the San Francisco ME's office, just like I did. But I worked in the San Francisco Medical Examiner's office for 9 years. Then I went to Alameda County. I worked there for 7 years, and now I'm working in New Zealand. So and in addition to that, I do legal consulting work. So when I get consulted on a case, I travel all over the world. I've, been to the Midwest, I've been to Florida, I've been, all over the United States. I've been consulted on cases internationally as well, in Israel and in other countries. So you have the opportunity to be an international level detective as a forensic pathologist, being brought in as a consultant. And I'm hoping we can bring Jessie in that direction. We'll see. We haven't quite gotten to those books yet, but that's what we're thinking about.
Oh, this is so cool. I love it. The chance to be an international detective. This is fabulous. Gail's asking, what is life like in New Zealand in the age of COVID? It sounds like you made a good move, Gail. I agree.
I hate to tell you, because you'll be jealous. It's completely normal.
It's normal.
It really is. The things that we do to make sure that the next outbreak of COVID here, because there will be another outbreak. The next outbreak is controllable. There is a scanner, an app that most people have on their smartphones. Every single public space you go up to has a barcode outside. You scan that to the app and it records that you were there, so that if there's an outbreak and they trace it to that spot, then they send you a notification saying you may have been exposed. Contact these people. We'll tell you what you are advised to do. That's number one. Number two, we still wash our hands a lot. And number three, we wear masks on public transportation.
And then the airplanes. So right now on airplanes, masks are required, but not outside in the community. The part of the reason for moving here was because I had been studying protocols for COVID-19 as part of my job for the Alameda County office. In fact, I was collecting protocols from all over the world. I got them from Singapore. I got them from China. I got whatever I could get. And when I saw the New Zealand response, I knew that I needed to be there, not only to protect my family, but also to learn from the process. And I think that the United States has a lot to learn from New Zealand. Mm-hmm. I don't think, people kind of poo-poo the New Zealand responses saying, oh, it was relatively easy because it's an island. It is easier when you are an island, but New Zealand was by no means disconnected from the world. In fact, there's a lot of trade that goes back and forth from
Tourism
Asia.
is a big part of the economy here that's been shut down.
It is. And so the immediate lesson that we can teach is that New Zealand can teach the United States is that this is containable, and it is actually eliminatable. You can eliminate it. Eliminate, is that a word? I always turn to my English major. Is that a word? You can eliminate COVID, and we have to pursue an elimination strategy because containment doesn't work with this virus. It's going to come back up.
Kiwis were very worried after their lockdown lasted like 6 weeks, and it was really really enforced. And that made an impression on them. And also it took the economy took a big hit because the government paid everybody to stay home, essentially. And everyone was worried that was going to lead to a recession. Well, the New Zealand economy is actually doing really, really well.
Huge.
It's astounded everybody.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that it shows that if you have a healthy population, you have a healthy economy. And that's what's happening here.
Yeah, and paid to stay home is what made the difference. It's not enough to just give somebody a $2,000 stimulus check for several months. They were actually paid their salaries through their companies. And many of our friends said, here in New Zealand, said it was fun. We liked it. We liked it. It was a staycation.
But people didn't have to choose between paying the rent and getting sick.
Yeah,
right.
And that made a huge difference here. People they watch what's going on in the world outside, and they can see that, and they're on pins and needles about what's going on outside of New Zealand, and they hope that vaccination starts spreading very soon.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think this shows exactly as you said, that this is containable, this is eliminatable, and also this is the power of having a female president who actually listens.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're very aware of that too.
Gail is saying this is fascinating. Thank you so much. Also that you guys married well. I agree. You seem like such a great pair.
Well, I did.
Yeah, TJ, you did well. I'm broadcasting live.
I'm the luckiest sort of writer. I am a dilettante writer. I don't have to work to make rent. I don't have to write anything I don't want to. Yeah. Dr. Melinek makes a very good living. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'm also lucky because I don't have to do most of the writing. I just throw ideas at him, and then at one point he just says, "Okay, enough talking. Let me go write."
Oh my God, I love you guys. Liz would like to know, what do you think of the new TV show Coroner?
God,
haven't watched it.
Haven't seen it.
We don't
can't
watch
get American television here.
Not only
anyway.
that, but we don't watch fictional TV shows about medical examiners because Judy starts shouting at the screen immediately.
Yeah. So that's the problem.
We can't do it.
I can't watch.
Some of them are good, but it's just any plot hole she goes bananas. So we don't do it.
That's the thing is I can't watch them because they're not forensically accurate. So I end up just yelling at the television. It's very stressful. And then on top of it, like, what do you want? If you've been doing something all day, do you want to then watch TV about what you just did all day? I mean, even if it's accurate, it's too stressful. I want to watch something to decompress.
So we're not familiar with it. Sorry.
That makes sense. Patricia says she is available to carry your luggage if you need help traveling. Just saying. Patricia speaking for all of us, top community member there. Patricia, thank you. Sharon, welcome. Gail says contract tracing, yes. Margaret saying, wow, next level preemptive contact tracing. Yeah, they're doing that in Australia too. My friends are telling me there. It's so much better. Patricia saying this is brilliant and makes so much common sense. Manhattan is an island and it became an epicenter. Exactly. Patricia, thank you. Yes.
I will point out that Britain is an island.
Yeah.
Britain's also an island. Australia is also an island and they've got it under control. Gail saying another job when you return, science advisor to TV shows. Gail, yes, that is actually a career. And one of our other guests, Alice Henderson, who's a wildlife researcher protecting endangered species, has worked for both the Lucasfilm Foundation, for Star Wars, for Star Trek, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer to make sure they get the science right. So
You've done that too.
I've done that already. I did that when I was in residency for ER. Remember?
Back in the day, yeah.
Back in the day, and then I've done it. I was on an episode of the Mythbusters.
Oh my God, there's a great Mythbusters.
You should totally check it out.
If you're Mythbusters fans,
it's
go
streaming.
find the episode Bite the Bullet.
Yeah.
And the B-roll on that one is Dr. Melinek investigating something.
Don't give it away.
I won't say any more than that.
It also,
and actually, the A-roll is really fascinating too, because the A-roll is about how the best way to seat people in an airplane. It's
a really good episode.
Yeah.
So
Bite the Bullet.
Highly recommend that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
and then
I'm
currently in top secret discussions with a film production company about potentially pitching a film based on my consulting practice. So the consult cases that I do, how consulting in forensic pathologists can give a second look or a different perspective, sometimes doing experiments to figure out what actually happened in cases. So, but that, I can't talk about the details.
Ooh, we're all excited. Come back and tell us when that happens. Margaret would like to know, what do you watch to decompress? Any good New Zealand shows? Now we need to know, Judy.
Ooh. So for New Zealand shows,
there's a show called
yeah.
Oh wait, it's Wellington Paranormal.
Wellington Paranormal is awesome.
Is a comedy show in the vein of Reno 911,
yeah.
where it's Wellington cops investigating supernatural activity in the city where we currently live, which is New Zealand's capital city of Wellington, a city that reminds us a lot of San Francisco.
Right.
Actually,
it looks like it a lot.
It's smallish and manageable. It's hilly. It's windy. There's lots of hipsters. We love it. And so we watch, we watch fun. That.
And then for American shows, I mean, I'm a big fan of The Daily Show.
Yeah.
In fact, I was actually also a consultant on The Daily Show.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So another thing you can stream and look up, there was
was it The Daily Show or was it?
Not The Daily Show, the Last Week Tonight.
Last Week Tonight.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But,
John Oliver. I love him.
Last Week Tonight. I was connected. Love The Daily Show. Love Last Week Tonight. And Last Week Tonight, I was a consultant on. They had an episode about forensic pathology. So
that's worth looking up too.
Yeah,
it's
that's
really
fantastic.
good Last Week Tonight about forensic pathology and about death investigation.
Yeah, I'm not interviewed, but I'm credited at the end.
When it comes to televised entertainment, we tend to follow whatever our two teenage daughters tell us we're watching, and they have great taste. And actually, right now, Leia, who is 17, is hooked on The Simpsons. So we've gone back, and we're on season 5 of The Simpsons. You know, when Conan O'Brien was the producer, and it's just so great. I haven't watched it in 30 years, and to watch it with a teenager with fresh eyes is a lot of fun.
So we have to explain some of the jokes.
We do a lot of stuff is a little dated. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Patricia is saying this is very exciting news about your secret dealings with we want to know more. Gail saying, TJ, you are right. You did marry well. I think we all have a crush on Judy. This is fantastic. So we have just about one more minute here. I just want to say, getting back to Aftershock, what is it you want people to walk away having read book 2, which, by the way, everybody, can be a standalone book, but is also book 2 in the Jessie Tuska series. What do you want people to feel, to experience, to walk away from Aftershock having felt?
I want them to get into my shoes, because even though Aftershock, you can tell from the title, we're not spoiling anything, occurs during an earthquake. The similarities in terms of how mass fatality response occurs and how you have to continue doing your investigative work on your regular cases, even while you're juggling this fatality incident, is as true as it can be. It's based on my own experiences, both in New York during 9/11, and then also I was at the Alameda County Sheriff Coroner's office during a mass fatality incident called the Ghost Ship Fire, which was fire in a warehouse. So I think that the take home is about juggling those two roles of being a detective on an actual homicide case where you have to investigate and figure out what happened, on a regular case that happens, simultaneously having to deal with the stresses of a disaster that befalls your city and affects everybody.
And my answer is very simple. My ethic as a writer is, it's a great privilege for me to be allowed into your head to take over your brain. And I expect that at the end of it, you feel like the 8 to 12 hours that you've given us, you find entertaining enough to be worth your time and money before having let us in there. That's basically it.
Oh,
and
I love both of those.
That you'll like the characters.
Yeah, we also hope that you'll get hooked on Jessie Tuska, because it's hard not to be.
I love both of these answers, both of these perspectives. You're right, TJ.
I'm sorry. One other thing.
Yeah,
you were right to say that. Yeah, Aftershock is a standalone. So if you read Aftershock and you enjoy it, please go back and read First Cut, because you'll enjoy First Cut a lot after reading Aftershock.
One won't spoil the other either.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much. Oh, we have just 2 more questions. Someone was Margaret would like to know who sleeps on the top bunk there.
Yeah, so we're in a tree house right now.
It's a youth hostel in the north of New Zealand, where we're actually on holiday right now.
Yeah, with our daughters,
as they say, on vacation. So actually, our daughters.
The bottom bunk is a double, so we were actually sleeping on the bottom. The daughters are next.
Perfect. Oh, Liz would like you to know, she said she just reserved Working Stiff on Hoopla. She can't wait to listen. You're now in her to be read TBR pile. Thank you. Yay, Liz. Thank you so much.
Big fan of Hoopla. I like Hoopla a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and the audio book for Working Stiff actually won a Headphones Award. Tanya
Yes, it
Levy
did.
is very, very good actor.
Yeah, and the audio books for both First Cut and Aftershock by Amanda Dolan are really, really great too.
Yeah, she does all the accents, which is amazing. We're really impressed with that.
Yeah, San Francisco, of course, the cast of characters comes from all over the world, and she's able to reproduce that. It's really amazing.
We didn't realize what a challenge it is for an audio actor, but it is.
No, I noticed that in their resumes, they list all the accents they can do. So this is fantastic. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, TJ. Thank you so much, Judy. I want to remind everyone that you can buy Aftershock today through our very special partnership with bookshop.org, which supports independent bookstores. As you know, or may know, one independent bookshop per week has gone out of business since the pandemic began last March, which is just devastating to think about. So we have to support indies if we want to come out of this and have bookshops to browse and aisles to linger in and pages to smell and a cup of coffee to get while we do it. So you can buy the book on sale today through bookshop.org. Margaret's putting the link in the comments, and you can get this great scientifically accurate look inside what it's like to be a forensic pathologist in a medical examiner's. We can walk in Dr. Judy's shoes, have a great mystery, and support indies. It's a win-win-win-win-win. So
Amen.
Thank you, mystery and thriller fans. Thank you, TJ and Judy, for joining us from your treehouse vacation in northern New Zealand. Gail saying this was absolutely wonderful. Thank you for the virtual visit to New Zealand. Gail, thanks as always for joining us. Thank you to both of our featured authors. You have been a delight. And we will see you next time right here on Mighty Mysteries. Have a great day, everyone. Gail, see you soon.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.